Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cabinet Vision Guy. In today's episode we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be showing you how we can use the submittals edition and the diewall package to build up a group of assemblies to make a reception counter like this. So let me just go into plan view and show you what I'm talking about. What we have here is a group of assemblies, and these have a diewall construction, and essentially what they do is they curve around and make up our reception counter, and then we've got a countertop placed on top. And if I just take a look, we've got one of the curved panels here, and if I go to section view you'll see that we've got a panel on the face and then a few different panels on the back in case we want to mount a bracket or something for the countertop. If I just return out for a second and then switch on assembly outlines only, we'll probably get a better idea of how this countertop is currently broken up. There we go, we can see a little bit better. So I've got multiple assemblies coming around this curve here that I've shaped and placed in. I've got multiple attributes set on here as well to trigger different operations that I want on partitions that I've got within my diewall construction. So I'm going to start this off from scratch, and I'm going to start off with a completely empty room. Now, whenever I come to draw or draft anything like this, whether it's through plan or elevation view, I like to start off in the same way by drawing myself some CAD to act as a guideline, but also give myself an idea of actually what I want to create. Often when we're sketching something like this, we don't really know how it's going to work until we've drawn it out, so it can be a really helpful process. So I'm going to head to plan view and just head to the area where I roughly want to draw my counter. And I'm going to head into CAD, and the first thing I want to do is build up a rough outline shape of the assemblies that I'm going to be placing. So I'm going to start off again, I'm going to place this roughly in the area where I'm going to be placing the counter assembly. And to save you sitting through me drawing some CAD out, I'll speed this part up. And what I'm left with is two different shapes that are going to make up the diewall assemblies before I add my countertops on. Now I've drawn this quite close to the wall, so what I'm going to do is just select the CAD and move it down here. So the next thing that I want to do is start to introduce a little bit more CAD to make up the countertop shape, and that's going to save me a lot of time at the end when I come to trace out that counter. I'm going to do that just by using the CAD that I've got in place at the moment, and I'm going to offset this by a couple of inches at either side. And what I'm left with is the rough outline of my assemblies and the rough outline of my countertops as well. So now what I need to do is I need to start to introduce some peninsula walls to place assemblies against. So I'm going to head into walls, and I'm going to change my wall type to peninsula and just make sure I'm in chained line. And then I'm going to use my assembly CAD to build up a few different walls to hold my assemblies. With that in place, I'll just go to 3D, and we'll see that obviously we're just building up in CAD at the moment, so there's not actually anything there. We've placed peninsula walls so you can't actually see these like you would do a standard wall. So if I go back to plan view, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to introduce a diewall assembly and set the properties of that assembly, and then we can start to modify the assembly and copy it over to build up our diewall construction. So I'm going to introduce a diewall assembly, and I'm just going to place it on this back wall to start with. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this relatively simple. The assembly itself is simple. It's essentially just made up of a left end, right end, top and bottom, and partitions in the middle through sectioning. If we just go through to section interior on our number 1 side, you'll see that we've got some partitions in there. And if we go to section face, you'll see that this has been broken up to potentially hold a bracket there. If I just head back into 3D, we've also got some different options here that come with the submittals edition for different operations that we want to place on our die wall. And the main operations are going to be placed on the end panels and the partitions. So we can do things like choose whether we want to notch or place a notch on both sides, and I'll just put textures on so we can see that. So we can choose to notch the toe. We can also choose different things like the wire chase operations that we're going to be adding. And once we choose the property that we want, we then get the options for adjusting these as well. Again, I'm going to keep this relatively simple and leave in place what I've got there. So what we're going to do with this is, if I just return out, I'm going to start off by simply copying and pasting this into place around the different outside edges of my wall. And if I just take a look again in 3D, you'll see that we've got some really basic assemblies built up there at the moment. What I've done is I've set the depth of these to be about 5 inches, and I've set the depth of this one to be about 7. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change the height of this one and increase it to make up obviously a taller section running around this outside edge here. And now what I can do is I can begin to shape my assemblies that are going to come around the 2 edges around here. So I'm going to right click and choose edit shape, and I'm going to select all and delete the current shape that's in place, and I'm going to draw a chain line to make up my new assembly shape. I'm going to make sure that I specify a face for this side and a face for this side as well. And then when I hit return, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head down to assembly level. And at that point, if I need to, I can add back in any sectioning that I might have lost when I modified the shape. So again, if I go to section view, I'm going to section the interior and just add a few partitions in there for us. And I'm going to add a panel onto the face as well. And then I'm going to repeat the same process for this assembly over here. Obviously, I'm going to take one of the assemblies that's a little bit shorter and also a little bit shallower as well. And then again, I'm just going to trace around the shape that's around the outside. With that now in place, it's time to turn our attention to our angled section of the assembly in this area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by heading down to assembly level on our assembly here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the panel that we've got on the face here and add an angle to this and bring it out in this section here. So I'm going to head into face view. I'm going to pick up the panel and right click and choose to edit shape. And I'm just going to start off by deleting the side that I've got here, and I'm going to delete the side that I've got here as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw this in and make sure I check that my shape is closed. And then you'll just see that we've got a panel now covering the face there. So the next thing I'm going to do is head back into face view, and I'm going to insert another object into this to essentially act as a frame to sit behind this. But I'm going to add a little bit more CAD in to start with, just to set out the assembly height for this section here. And that gets me a little bit of a guide for my next section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit return, and from here I'm then going to go into objects and I'm going to insert another diewall assembly. This one I've saved away as the diewall frame only, and the only difference with this one and our normal diewall is this one has the offset at the bottom just set to 0, so the base is running all the way to the bottom, and we don't have some of the properties set as well for different machining. The next thing that I'd like to do is modify the shape of this assembly. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head into CAD, and I'm just going to copy the CAD that I've placed on this assembly. And to get down to assembly level for my sub-assembly, I'm going to go into reports, into order entry, and I'm just going to pick up and hit edit. And from face view, I'm going to go back to CAD and just place my CAD here. And from here, what I can do is just hit return and edit the shape of the assembly. And again, I'm going to pick up a chained line and just redraw the outside edge and trim up the edges that I don't want to keep. I'm going to set this side to be a finished end and make sure I've still got this one set to be a top, an end, and a bottom. I'll set this one to be an unfinished while I'm here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to section view, and I'm going to section the interior, and I'm going to add in a couple of partitions for support into this frame as well. And now if I head back to plan view and into my main assembly, we should see that we've now got a frame that's shaped behind. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that into position from plan view. And then if I go back to face, the next thing that I'm going to do is place the assembly that I like up at the top here. So I'm going to go back into objects, diewall frame only, and just like before, I'm going to place this one. And before I go ahead and set the unit size, I'm actually going to trim away any CAD that I don't now need down here. So I'm going to get rid of everything, which will hopefully leave me with the unit size that I need up at the top. And now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back in and select my CAD again and follow the same process as before. And now I'm going to pick up my second sub-assembly and head down to edit. And again, I can head into CAD and place this somewhere in the center. And then from here, what I can do is I can hit return again and edit the shape. And all I need to do is draw my line in across here and trim up the parts again that I don't need. And if I go back to edit shape, I can set this side. And again, I'm going to set this one to be a finished end. And then what I'm going to do on this, I'm actually going to modify the depth of the assembly as well. So if I go into assembly, and I'm going to set the depth to be the full 7 inches for this one. So there, if I return out again and then just head back into plan and pick up my main assembly to go look at the modifications, we should now see that we've got 2 frames in place, ready to take our panel down here and make up our section up at the top. If I want to, on this sub-assembly, I can also add a panel into the back here. I'm going to leave it as it is for now and move on to adding on the countertop. So if I hit return from here and head back into room level, what I now need to do is build up the countertop that's going to make up the 2 tops that I've got available here. So if I head into tops, what I need to do is just make sure that I've got my peninsula wall selected before I go adding in any countertops in there. And then I'm just going to go to new top and essentially just trace around the CAD that I've already added in. I'm going to build this section in one big countertop, but obviously you might want to include a split in this as well. And then for any arcs, I'm just going to use the bend tool. And again, I'm just snapping to the marks that I've already got in place. And if I just return out, I'm going to obviously save the shape and just head into 3D to take a look at this. And as you can see, we've now got a nice countertop shape following around this diewall assembly we've got at the bottom. So let's go ahead and add the countertop into this top section as well. So if I go into tops, and again, I'm going to follow the same process, just using the snap marks and the CAD that I've already got in place to define my countertop. And the last thing I'm going to do with this countertop is just set the height of it, because obviously this one's a slightly different height to the other countertops. And if we go into 3D now and take a look, we should see we've got a countertop up at the top here, and I'll just cycle around some of the different views. There we go. So we've got a countertop that runs around here and a countertop underneath, and obviously this nice angled section at the front. Hopefully you found this episode useful. Feel free to give us a like, share and subscribe. We're also on Facebook, that's facebook.com/thecabinetvisionguy, and Instagram too, that's instagram.com/thecabinetvisionguy. Cheers!